Good afternoon, everyone joining from Indonesia. I welcome you today to our training on how to protect yourself against spyware. I'm Saba, and I'm the Public Affairs and Communications Officer at Rights and Security International. I introduce my colleague, Ilaha. I'll let Ilaha introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Adalah, and I am a trainer and educator in gender-based violence. I specialize in tech-facilitated abuse. So over the years, I've worked on different cases and delivered a lot of training on online harms and tech-facilitated abuse and how perpetrators exploit technologies to further and facilitate their abuse.
Thank you, Ilaha. I'd also like to mention that this training is being recorded and this training is being delivered in English, but if you would like to join via the transcript, via the interpretation, this training is also available in Bahasa. So I'd just like to bring that to everyone's attention. So I'll now be beginning our presentation, and hopefully everyone can let me know if they can see the presentation. If Zoom lets me share my screen. For some reason that's not working.
Let me see, I have the option to share screen, but I don't have the most updated slides shared, but the initial slides are the same. So if you want, I can share my screen.
That would be great. Thank you, Adalah.
I actually can't because I've been disabled. I'm not allowed to share it.
Okay, I'm not sure why that's happening. Okay, I'm just trying to make you the host. If I made you the host, are you able to share your screen now?
Yes, let's have a look. Right. Yes, there we go. Can you see the slides?
Yes, yeah.
Let me go full screen then. I will. There you go.
Oh, thank you. Oh, okay. And I didn't send you the most updated version. It should say February, but okay. Well, okay. Excuses, everyone. It should say February 2022. But yeah, thank you for your introduction, Ilaha. I'll start off by introducing Rights and Security International. Ilaha, would you mind going to full screen on the slide?
Is it not full screen anymore? Yeah, that's fine. Sorry about that.
That's right. Thank you. So, as an introduction to Rights and Security International, for over 30 years, Rights and Security International has held governments to account for discrimination and other human rights harms committed in the name of national security. We work to get racism and other bias out of national security policies and bring in human rights and accountability. We work directly with communities to establish the facts and make human rights an effective, practical tool for change. Essentially, we are a small organisation, but we stand for rights and accountability and against bias. Some of our major project work streams include advocating for the repatriation of children and women in northeast Syria, working to deliver justice to the victims of state action during the Troubles, and examining the government's prevent strategy. We have a few exciting reports emerging in the next few months, so please keep an eye out for that. Next slide, please, Ilaha.
Sorry, it wouldn't let me. There you go.
Thank you. So I'd also like to take a moment to introduce the RISE Coalition. So Rights and Security International has introduced the RISE Coalition, and it was launched fairly recently. And it's a network of human rights groups around the world that work together to share our knowledge, identify ways our governments are harming people's rights in the name of security, and to take collective action. We amplify the voices of local organisations in the global south and support them to take their work further and to do so safely on the local, national, and international levels. We also gather, analyse, and publish evidence and create impactful new policy ideas and legal arguments based on the research coalition members are doing. We support each other in expanding our efforts to protect human rights across the globe by facilitating knowledge and exchanging experiences. So joining the RISE Coalition is free, and I hope you will consider reading more about the coalition through our website. Next slide, please. So I've given a bit of background to us, but I'll also tell you what today's training involves. So today's training will be covering what is spyware, what the main types of spyware are, ways to check your devices for spyware, what you could do if you find spyware, and recommendations to protect yourself from spyware. Next slide, please. So I'd like the audience to please bear in mind some housekeeping. And next slide, please. This is a virtual training. RSI will also be, this should say we'll be recording the training, and we are actually recording the training, just to let everyone know. It is possible that others could interpret the training and or demand details about the training from Zoom. So please think about this before discussing anything sensitive. Thank you, Adalah. Next slide, please.
So what is spyware? Spyware is a malicious software, also known as malware, that can extract, take information from
mengambil informasi dari alat-alat kita, seperti lokasi kita, foto-foto, dan pesan-pesan apa yang ada.
A spyware could be installed onto your devices. That includes smartphones, tablets, laptops, and others. Without your knowledge and consent, it is possible for people to, install spyware onto your devices without having physical access. And this is something that we would cover later in some of the other slides. One example of a spyware that is been quite prominent, and some of you may have heard about it in the news as well, is Pegasus, which was delivered by the NCO group. Now, NCO group is an entity, an organization that sort of works with governments to develop spyware that could essentially spy on journalists or, organizations, non-government organizations. So Amnesty International has developed a tool that could be used to detect it. What you can do is you can actually scan the barcode that you could see on the slide, and you should be able to learn a bit more about the tool that was developed by Amnesty International.
Great, thank you, Adalah.
So, go on, Salah.
Sorry, I'd like to introduce a few questions. And Adalah, I'd like to ask you actually, kind of currently, what might you do? Why might you want to protect yourself or people you work with against spyware? And also, what methods do you use now to protect yourself against spyware?
I think it's very important, Sadaf, that we all have the autonomy over our own technology. So it's really, really important that we live in a free world, and having privacy is incredibly important. So for me personally, I make sure that I'm changing my passwords every 3 months at the minimum, because it's very easy for people to guess our passwords, especially, you would be surprised as to how many people use their date of birth, their children's names, name of family members, date of birth of people that they love as their password. And this is something that very clearly could be intercepted. So for me, it's very important that I'm using very, very strong passwords that people can't guess. I use a lot of random words, digits, symbols, and I also make sure that I'm changing them regularly every 3 months. That's something that I do, but you can, at the very most, the best practice is to at least change your password every 6 months, but I tend to do it 3 months because just to be on the safe side, being aware of the risk that technology could bring. So that's one thing that I do. I'm also very careful about not opening any links that I don't know. So from time to time, I receive emails from all these strange companies sending me links and asking me to open links. I'm very careful that I'm not opening any links from email addresses that I don't recognize. I also from time to time receive, text from numbers that I don't recognize as well. So if they have attachments or any links, then I make sure that I'm not opening them. And I believe in maintaining a good digital hygiene. We care about, our safety in physical spaces. So it's very important to care about our safety in online spaces as well. So I'm careful about what websites I'm using. I also use an antivirus on all my devices just to be on the safe side. This is something we'll be talking about later when we provide some tips.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for an insight on how you protect your devices and the kind of spyware that you might look out for. It's really, really helpful to know. Thank you. If you wouldn't mind going on to the next slide, please. So we'll be covering a few of the main types of spyware. So one main type of spyware is mobile spyware. And so this could include mobile apps that gather data from your device and send it to another device. So examples of these kind of apps could include an app called FlexiSpy or mSpy and things like that. Next one, please. Thank you. So another main type of spyware is stalkerware. So these are apps that are marketed to people to monitor or harass their partner or family members, friends, basically anyone that you might want to actually spy on and anyone's behavior you might want to monitor through their devices. And this could also include apps that could be misused this way. And this is a form of abuse. So apps like this or spyware like this could include Cerberus or dual-use apps. Next, please. Thank you. So another main type of spyware is browser hijackers. And this is spyware that can record your browser information and your internet activity. So another example of this is Cool Web Search. And another main type is keyloggers. So keyloggers are apps that can detect your keystrokes. So when you're typing on your device, it basically monitors exactly which keys you're hitting, and therefore it knows what you're searching, what messages you're sending, which emails you're sending, and that sort of thing. And this will record the keystrokes on your devices. And these are hardware-based and software-based keyloggers. Next slide, please. Thank you.
So how can you check for spyware on your device, or how can you actually know that someone may have installed spyware on your device? It's very, very important to remember that before you get started, if you have doubts in your mind that someone could be spying on you by a spyware, there are times where it might not be the case. Maybe people just know about your location, or people may be guessing your data or who you're calling on your phone, for example. They might actually have this information through having access to your account. So someone may have carried out an account compromise. So what that essentially means is that people may have figured out your password, like I was mentioning earlier. This is why it's so important to have strong passwords. So people may have, people that you're suspecting who may be spying on you. They may have somehow gotten into your account by guessing your password, or they may have known your password, prior to sort of being in contact with you. So an account compromise could reveal many things that a spyware could essentially reveal. So if someone has gotten access to your Google account or your iCloud account, that could give them quite a lot of information. Google could be very, very intrusive as well. And if someone can manage to get into your account, they could essentially know if your location services are on your Google account. They could essentially know everywhere that you're going. They could essentially have access to your emails. And the same applies to iCloud as well. They could essentially know about your location services or any messages that you might be sending via iMessage. They may have access to that. So it's very, very important to remember that the issue might not always be spyware. There are times where people may have access to your information through account compromise.
Thank you, Alaha. So we'll be mentioning some tips on how to protect yourself against spyware, and there are various ways to check for spyware on your devices. So some of these tips will vary depending on the device you're using and the device that you're concerned about. So for example, a smartphone versus a laptop, and also the entity, so the adversary, the person you're worried about, whether that be a hacker or a government agent or a corporate company. And while some people might think that, for example, all Apple products are really good at actually stopping spyware actually entering the device, you must keep in mind as well that iPhones, iPads, and Macs are still also vulnerable to spyware. Next slide, please.
So how can you spot the signs of spyware on your devices. The very basic one is actually looking for apps on your device. So you can actually, now with the new update on the iPhone, as some of you might be aware, not all the apps that are installed on your iPhone would show up on your home screen. So you have to go to App Library to look for it. So it's very important that you do this from time to time. Just look for any apps that you may have been installed on your phone. But you can also essentially look for side-loaded apps. What side-loaded apps mean that these are apps that could have been downloaded onto your device via a third party, via a third source. So these could be apps that you may not have installed yourself, via iOS or Google App Store. So it's very important that from time to time we actually go and check for what apps are on your phone. And obviously, if you don't recognize anything, you can just easily delete the app. But it's very important to remember before deleting any app that it could put you at further risk. So this is something worth keeping in mind. If it could escalate the risk for you, then we always recommend that you speak to a professional. You either speak to a specialist domestic abuse service in your local area or call a professional for help. Don't delete any apps if you feel like it could escalate the risk for you. We also have some very helpful guides on Android phones and iPhones, and you can scan the barcodes on the screen to have access to the guides.
Thank you, Laha. So another way you want to actually check for spyware is by looking for regular apps that can be misused. So one kind of app is a dual use app. An example of this is Life 360. So there is a category of apps we call dual use apps that can basically have legitimate uses, but that someone else could also potentially use to monitor you. So examples of these are Google Maps, which is usually quite innocuous, very friendly, but they can actually be used for more malicious purposes, and perhaps even Find My Phone or Find My iPhone. These apps are not spyware, but they could let someone else track you or get information about you. We recommend that you go to the settings menu on your phone, whether that be an Android or an iPhone or any other type of phone, and check the position those apps have. For example, these apps can get access to your location or even to your camera. You can also check the app settings to see if the app is set to share your location or other information with someone else. We also recommend checking for apps that allow remote access, i.e. that is access to your phone from another device, such as TeamViewer. If you are worried about a dual-use app, you can try uninstalling or turning it off, and you can also change the app settings. Next slide, please.
So one other way in which you can find out whether your device is vulnerable. Now, if your device is more vulnerable, that essentially means that it gets easier for people to compromise them or install spyware onto your device. You can check whether your device is vulnerable or not by checking if your device is rooted in cases of Android or jailbroken in cases of iPhone. What rooted or jailbreaking essentially mean is that people could surpass the security, the built-in security that your device may have. So when you purchase your phone, whether it's your Android phone or your iPhone, they have built-in security feature from the company. And those security features protect your device from being compromised. If your phone has been jailbroken or rooted, those security features are essentially gone. And for any phone that is jailbroken and rooted, it becomes then easier for people to install spyware onto your device. Unfortunately, it's difficult to tell. It's not possible to be able to tell whether your phone has been jailbroken or rooted. And people do need physical access to your phone to be able to jailbreak and root them. So just think about whether any entity that you might be suspecting may have had access to your phone physically, and if they have had, and you doubt that your phone may have been compromised, then it's worth replacing your phone if that is possible at all for you to do. And once again, there are some very helpful guides that we have, which you can find more about about your Android phone and iPhone security, and you can access them by scanning the barcodes provided on the screen.
Thank you, Laha. So we also want to be looking for signs that unwanted apps are running. So on your laptop, your PC, you can also check for apps that are running in the background and apps that started running as soon as the device is turned on. So that's usually through your settings, that's usually through like the task manager on your device, and you will be able to see on your screen and on the list in the software of the task manager which apps are running. If there are some apps that are running that you might seem you might not be able to recognize, or apps perhaps maybe even on your phone device that are draining a lot of battery, you can actually check. You can maybe perhaps raise suspicion about these apps and then take action from there. And as Laha has mentioned, there are useful guides on the screen, so you can actually scan those guides on your Windows or your Mac by actually using your phone device against the screen.
Thank you, Sada. So as I was mentioning earlier, you can always scan your phone for any apps that you might not recognize and remove them, but obviously it comes with the risk, so always consider what the risk may be if you were removing any apps or uninstalling any apps from your device. Another good way to sort of see if there is anything suspicious on your phone is checking for logos. So actually do go search all the apps that are installed on your phone or on your device. See if you recognize any logos. If there are any logos that you don't recognize, then it essentially looks suspicious and you can then remove that unknown logo. But bear in mind that this is not a very reliable strategy, because some spyware and malicious software could disguise themselves. So they could be hiding behind a legitimate logo. Now, some very advanced spyware, they might show on your phone screen as the Instagram logo, but in reality, it might not be the Instagram logo, or it might show up as the calculator logo. So you might go through your phone looking for logos or any suspicious logos, and you might not find anything, but that doesn't guarantee that your phone is actually not compromised, because like I said, it is possible for spyware to disguise themselves as legitimate logos or legitimate sources.
Thank you, Laha. So another way you might want to check for signs of spyware, which is again not the most reliable, but these are still healthy checks for you to be able to do quite easily, is check your battery and data usage. So for example, if your battery and data usage, as I mentioned previously, if they're being drained unreasonably and quite quickly, and that seems a little bit abnormal to you, then perhaps it could be an unfamiliar app that is actually draining the charge on your phone or on your device. So again, there are two helpful guides on the screen that you can actually use to check whether this might be the case.
Thank you, Sadaf. And it's very important to remember, as Sadaf was saying, that all the tips that we're providing, they're not the ultimate tips. They all come with the risk. And just because you have sort of followed all those tips and you've checked your phone for any suspicious, apps or any suspicious logos, it doesn't fully guarantee that your phone is not compromised. So there are a few questions that are worth asking yourself. So the entity or adversary that you're concerned about, did they ever have physical access to your device? In the cases that I've worked on prior, it's always been an abusive ex-partner. And in those cases, they've always had physical access to, victim survivors' devices that I've worked with. So it's worth asking yourself in your case, if you're suspecting anyone, did they have physical access to your phone? Were they able to physically pick up your device when that was? To really sort of sit down and, think about the scenarios where someone suspicious may have had access to your phone. If they did have physical access to your device, what kind of information they were able to get from your device? Were they able to, unlock your phone using a PIN or password? And then it's important to check your settings to make sure if there have been any changes made to your settings. It's important to sort of check your location services. Now, you may have had your location services off, but if someone had physical access to your location services, they may have then switched it on, or they may have changed some of your very important settings or some of your passwords. So it's really important to sort of remember that physical access, or people having gone through your settings and changing certain settings that could put you at risk. There is a very useful guide that you can access by scanning this barcode on the screen on how you can turn off significant location settings on your iPhone. And from my experience, I always used to advise my clients that location services is absolutely the key. If your location services are on and someone knows the password to your account, or they have access to your iCloud or your Google account, essentially your location service on means that they can follow your location virtually everywhere you're going. So ask yourself, do you need to have your location services on? What are the safety precautions that you need to take around your location? And I fully acknowledge that some people do need their location services on because they need to go around to different places, but there are ways around it. You can essentially download maps offline. So you can download Google Maps offline. There is an app called maps.me, which you can download offline. So you don't actually need to have your location services on to be able to get to places. So there is always ways around it, but always checking your settings and questioning yourself whether someone could have had access to your device and would have changed some settings that could put you at risk.
Wonderful, thank you, Adalah. So further questions worth asking yourself are whether you might be on a family phone plan with anyone that you're concerned about. So this could be an abusive partner, this could be an abusive family member or even friend. For example, anyone that you might share a phone plan with. This family phone plan might not exist in the country you're based in, or it might work differently, but it's still something to actually bear in mind, which is particularly relevant in the context of intimate partner violence. So if you are on a family phone plan with someone you're concerned about, the phone plan could give that person access to information about your calls, your texts, and your location. Some family phone plans also let adults on the account install tracking apps on phones that are on the plan. These apps are sometimes called parental apps and are usually intended to let adults monitor children. However, adults can also misuse them to track other adults. You may want to check to see whether one of your phones or tablets or a child's phone or tablet has a tracking app from a phone company installed on it. Some states also have laws designed to help abuse survivors leave family phone plans. You might want to ask a lawyer or a domestic violence organization in your area for more information about this. A family phone plan might not be relevant to you depending on the country you're living in, or it might take a different form in your region, but it's still very useful to be aware of the different ways someone can actually access your data.
So now you've done everything. You have, you suspected that there might be spyware on your device. You've taken a lot of different steps. You've checked your phone for different icons. You've checked your phone for like logos that you might not recognize. You have gone through your settings. But what if you actually do find an app that you don't recognize, which could essentially be spyware? What do you do then? Now, if it's a stalkerware or an app that visibly show up on your phone, consider removing it. Like we mentioned earlier, it comes your phone through that essential software. If you remove it, they would know. So that comes with the risk, especially in cases of domestic abuse. I've seen time after time when that control is gone from the abuser who has installed spyware, that could really, really escalate the risk. So if you remove that app, that control is gone, and that could put you in a potentially dangerous situation. So consider the risk. Maybe speak to a professional if there are any specialist domestic abuse charities in your local area. Please contact them, speak to a professional. You can also potentially consider reporting it because, as Sadat mentioned, in a lot of countries under the law, it is a criminal offense. So that's another thing that you might consider. Before removing it, always think moving and want to go to the police in the future and have it reported and sort of go down that route of seeking justice for it, because it is a criminal offense to illegally spy on someone. Then removing it essentially means that evidence is gone. So think about what risk it could bring or think about evidence preservation. And then if you felt like still you want to remove it and there was no risk, then consider removing and do remove the app.
Great, thank you, Adalah. So another thing you might want to do, what you might want to consider if you think you have found spyware on your device is, as Adalah mentioned, consider switching to a new device. But for example, if it's an account compromise on an app, for example, or on Google, if you're using the same account, if you're using your same Google account on your old device and you bring that account onto your new device, then you'll still have the same problem. And so that's something you might want to consider before you actually switch to a new device altogether.
You can also reset your phone. So if, like we mentioned earlier, you can essentially remove an app if it visibly shows up on your device. But it's very important remembering that not all spyware actually physically show up on your phone. So they could be hiding, still running in the background, but you would never be able to find it. It doesn't show. So if you feel like, there is all the signs of spyware and there is spyware running in the background on your phone, you can consider resetting your phone. What resetting your phone essentially means is that everything that exists on your phone, that is essentially all gone. So all your photos, all your apps, they are all gone. So you're erasing all the content and setting on your phone. But please bear in mind that that doesn't also 100% guarantee that the spyware is also removed from your device. Now, I've worked on, with multiple clients in the past where they found spyware on their phone. They have then performed a factory reset on their phone. They have erased the phone completely and they felt like, okay, this is it. My phone is safe now because I removed everything from the phone. But then they have gone and used the same iCloud account to set up the phone again. And then they have restored the settings. What that essentially do is that all the reset is nullified. It didn't mean anything because you've used the same account to set up your phone again. So the same settings return onto your phone. So that's another thing worth remembering. And like I said, this method doesn't 100% guarantee that your phone is fully safe. So if it is possible, if this is something that you can afford, and I understand that a lot of people can't afford to buy another phone, it's very expensive to buy a brand new phone. But if you can afford at all, if it is possible at all, then we do recommend getting a brand new device and also using a brand new account to set up your phone. Because even if you're buying a new account, but if you're using the same iCloud or the same Google account that you used on the compromised account, then that doesn't mean anything again, because you could be restoring the same setting onto your new phone. So purchasing a new phone and using brand new accounts could potentially guarantee more safety than resetting the old phone.
Thank you very much, Adalah. So again, if you do think you found spyware on your device, what you could do is log out of all active sessions on your accounts. That could be your Google account, your iCloud, your Instagram, for example, like social media, Snapchat, any of those things. You can change your password or your PIN and turn on two-factor authentication. And you should use a strong password, as Adalah mentioned when we actually opened up the discussion, and think about how you store it. So if you're storing your passwords on the Notes app on your phone, for example, and someone has access to your device, or someone can actually monitor what you're typing onto your device, then they will automatically know your passwords. So the strongest way of actually storing any information is usually paper. So if you live with someone, for example, and you're storing paper, like paper copies of your passwords in your home, that could be quite difficult. So think about storing your passwords in a safe place where ideally no one else has access to those passwords, whether that be digitally, somewhere like we think no one might have access to those passwords, or somewhere like paper-based, like in a notebook, somewhere where you can store the notebook where no one else will get access to it. So in the context of intimate partner violence, it is important to do safety planning before taking any action, because the person you're worried about that could get information about you from one of your online accounts instead of from spyware might actually have guessed the password to your iCloud, your Google Gmail account, and this could then therefore give them access to your location, to your photos, to your calendar, to your emails, or any other type of information that you might want to protect about yourself.
So like I mentioned earlier, in many countries, it is actually illegal to install spyware on people's devices without their consent. So if it is safe for you to do that, then consider reporting it to law enforcement in your country. And if it is a safe option, because there might be times where you feel like, you know, that could once again escalate your risk. And also it is important to know the law and legislation in your country. I live in the UK, and in the UK it is a criminal offence, and from my understanding, and a lot of other countries, it is a criminal offence as well. You can go on this website called identitytheft.gov, and you can find, you know, a lot more information on there, and you can essentially report identity theft on the website as well and get a recovery plan. So that could be a good way to sort of report it initially, and then later on consider reporting it to law enforcement if it is a criminal offence in your country. But familiarize yourself with the local laws to see what it says and what sort of the process is, what kind of evidence you might need to provide. And once you know about that, then it's all about sort of preserving and getting all those evidence together and then reporting it. Prepare yourself before you go down that route.
Thank you very much, Adalah.
Is this me as well?
No, that would be me. But we have some recommendations to protect yourself from a spyware. So you want to maintain your devices and keep your apps up to date. So you want to be installing operating systems and make sure whenever your phone recommends updating your app or updating your device, you do want to do that. And Apple, Google, and Microsoft regularly release updates to basic software that makes your phone, your tablet, or your computer run. And this software is called the operating system. So for Apple devices, this will usually be iOS, iPad OS, or Mac OS, so Mac operating system or iPad operating system. For Samsung, Google, LG, Motorola, Nokia devices, it will usually be Android. For other devices, it will usually be Windows. And these system updates often include important security protections. So we recommend that you install updates whenever they are available. Some apps will also ask you if you'd like to update them, and we'd also recommend that if you think the app is legitimate, that you also update the most up-to-date version of the app.
And this is something that we highlighted in the discussions as well. Protect all your accounts with very, very strong passwords. And like I said, I always get surprised as to how many people I work with, and they use very, very basic passwords. They'd be using their children's date of birth or even their own date of birth. It's very easy for people to then guess those passwords. So protect all your accounts and all your devices with very strong passwords, random numbers, digits, symbols, and passcodes. And also, as Sadaf mentioned, using two-factor authentication. So two-factor authentication is adding an additional layer of security onto your account. That could once again sort of protect you and protect your accounts from being compromised. If someone tries to hack into your account and you're using two-factor authentication, you could be notified via email or via a text message. So that's very, very important. I always recommend people to use two-factor authentication to, you know, to provide them that extra layer of security. And also, we've said this before, to reiterate, think about who has had physical access to your devices. But having said that, it's very important to bear in mind that people do not actually need physical access to be able to install or send spyware onto your devices. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm very careful about what kind of emails I'm opening or what messages I'm opening. If I'm getting text messages or emails from unknown addresses, unknown numbers, and they come with links or attachments, then I'm not opening them, because that could potentially be someone's way of sending the spyware to my device. So just be very, very careful around that as well. And lastly, think about where you store your passwords. You know, Sadaf mentioned that paper, that back in the days everyone used to use, you know, we all used to write our passwords on a piece of paper. And that was sort of, that potentially is the safest way in some situations. But if you are a victim of intimate partner violence or domestic abuse, then that might not actually be the safe option for you, because your abuser might get access to might have physical access to your notebook where you're storing your password. If you're using a password manager, essentially, then that password you're using to protect the password manager, that is also very important. So think about where you've stored all your passwords, what kind of password you're using, and two-factor authentication. Those could really, really protect you against spyware.
Thank you, Laha. So we have a few further recommendations to protect yourself against spyware. So it's ideal to install an antivirus app on all of your devices. And so some very well-known and actually legitimate antivirus apps include Avast, Kaspersky, Malwarebytes, and Norton. So antivirus apps are able to scan your phone or your computer and notify you if they find spyware, malware, or adware installed. They can also alert you if a website you're visiting may be dangerous. There are several different types of antivirus apps available in the Apple Store and in the Google Play Store, such as AVG, Antivirus, Avast Antivirus, and the others I've mentioned. And then another very popular antivirus software company is McAfee, so McAfee Mobile Security. And using an antivirus app can help make your device safer. We recommend using an antivirus app if you can. However, be aware that antivirus apps will not necessarily flag the dual use app as dangerous. Spyware can also still be a risk even if you are using an antivirus app.
Thank you, Sadaf. Can I just add one quick point? With that, I completely agree that, with some very strong spyware, these antivirus apps and software, they might not be able to detect them, but it also depends on how updated your antivirus software is. You can have malware version, and these antivirus software, they release updates quite regularly, so it's pointless. The spyware come very often. There are new ones released very regularly, but the same with antivirus updates, they come very regularly. So making sure that you're updating your antivirus software regularly is very important. And lastly, running scans. Some of these run automatic scans, but some of them actually don't run scans. So every once in a while, if you have these on your device, just go and make sure that you're running manual scans on your devices as well. Otherwise, there might be something running on your laptop, but because they haven't run automatic scan, you would never know. Sorry, I think I've gone.
That's fine. I can take it. I can take this slide actually. But further recommendations to protect yourself from spyware could be by being careful when you're downloading a file or clicking a link on an email or a message. As Ilaha mentioned at the beginning, she avoids clicking links on emails that she doesn't recognize. And there is another helpful guide on the screen, which is a useful learning tool to learn to identify phishing emails. And phishing is basically when someone is trying to actually request information from you. So in a typical phishing attack, scammers can send fake emails to thousands of people asking for sensitive information such as bank details or containing links to bad websites, which might actually download malware or might download spyware onto your device, or even virus onto your device. If you receive an unusual request by email, check the source of the email to verify the legitimacy of the request. Does the person sending the email need to be emailing you? Do they need to have their identity verified somehow? For example, you might actually receive an email from what looks like your bank, but if you actually check the email, the sender, if they've got some digits in their email that don't seem familiar, or for example, a well-known bank in the UK is Barclays. If someone who's pretending to be from the Barclays bank sends you an email, but the email account isn't actually from Barclays or it looks a bit different, it might not actually be a legitimate sender. So if the person who's sending you an email, are they contacting your friends or your family or colleagues? That's another way of checking the legitimacy of the person who is sending you the email. Many phishing scams originate overseas, and often the spelling, grammar, and punctuation are poor. Others will also try to create official-looking emails, like I've mentioned, by including logos and graphics. So is the design or the quality of the email what you would expect from a large organization? And is it addressed to you by name, or does it refer to a valued customer or a friend or a colleague? This could be a sign that the sender does not actually know you and that this is part of a phishing scam? And does the email contain a veiled threat that asks you to act urgently? So you should be suspicious of words like send these details within 24 hours, or you have been a victim of crime, click here immediately. Report attacks if you think that you have been subject to phishing. And also use multi-factor authentication to protect your account, which Allah has mentioned is a requirement of 2 or more credentials like passwords to log into an account. So that could include a passcode or security key, which is usually sent to your mobile or your email, for example.
And very important that you're downloading apps from legitimate sources. So in cases of iPhone, from the iOS App Store, and in cases of Android, from the Google Play Store, because that's where only legitimate apps are. If you're downloading apps, we've mentioned this earlier as well, from a third party or apps that you're sideloading onto your device, then there is a very high chance that they come with a virus. So always make sure, if it is a possibility, that you're installing applications only from official app stores rather than downloading them from third parties, or sideloading those apps onto your device.
Thank you, Alaha. So we've given you lots of tips and advice today on how to recognize spyware on your devices potentially, how you can go about removing spyware from your devices. But also there are organizations in the human rights field who you can reach out to if you fear someone has installed spyware on your devices. 2 examples of these organizations are the Citizen Lab and Access Now. Also, for example, Ilaha actually works in that field, and so you can find consultants or you can find organizations that can help you with this sort of thing. So that is a lot of the information that we covered today. Ilaha, is there anything else that you wanted to mention before we close off?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that prevention is better than cure, and we did cover that briefly today as to what you can do to protect yourself in the first place from your device being compromised. But even if it is compromised, then it's not the end of the day. And from my own personal working experience, I know that sometimes people feel like, oh my God, like there is spyware on my device. What can I do? It's the end of the world. How now I just need to throw everything away and just get a whole new phone. It's not actually the end of the world. There are ways in which you can get the autonomy over your technology back. But if I was to promote something more than I would promote, prevention, making sure that you follow the tips that we provided today in the first place to make sure that your device is not compromised. Maintaining that good digital hygiene is absolutely the key, and protecting yourself in the online world.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Alaha. I would just like to thank the audience for attending today's session from Rights and Security International. I would also please encourage you to actually check out our other work, which you can find through our website, and also to ask you to consider joining the RISE Coalition. You can also find more information about the RISE Coalition on our website. I'd like to very much thank my co-host Ilaha, and also Iris Griffiths, who has organised the interpretation today in Bahasa, and also our wonderful interpreters Abin and Devi. So this training is available, and it will become available online, and you will be able to actually access that in the English and also in the Bahasa. But once again, I'd like to thank the audience for attending today, and I hope everyone will take care and have a wonderful rest of the week. And thank you very much.